Find why you avoid thinking even when you know you should. There's something happening inside your head right now that you've never been told about, not in school, not by your parents, probably not by anyone. And the strangest part, it's been running your life without you even noticing. Here's the thing, which when you woke up this morning, you made a dozen decisions before you even got out of bed. What to wear, whether to check your phone, whether to actually get up or hit snooze for the 5th time. You felt like you were making those choices, deliberate, conscious, in control. But what if you weren't? What if most of what you call thinking is actually just your brain taking shortcuts? And what if those shortcuts are so fast, so smooth, so invisible, that you genuinely can't tell the difference between a real decision and an automatic reflex dressed up to look like one? This is the secret researchers stumbled onto after decades of studying how the human mind actually works. And when the evidence finally came together, it wasn't just surprising, it was unsettling, because it meant that the confident, rational, logical person you believe yourself to be might be something more like a passenger in a car, convinced they're driving, while something else entirely handles the wheel. Let's start with a simple experiment. Take a look at this. 17x24. You saw it. You recognized it instantly as a math problem. You even had a vague sense that you could solve it, but that it would take some effort, maybe some scratch paper. You probably didn't get the answer right away unless you did the work step by step. Now think about this. Why did solving that feel different from, say, recognizing a friend's face? When a face you know walks through a door, you don't try to recognize them. It just happens, instantly, effortlessly. You don't say to yourself, let me cross-reference the shape of the nose, the distance between the eyes, the jawline. No, you just know who it is before you can even explain how. That difference between the face and the math problem is the crack in the wall where everything begins. There are, in a very real sense, two different systems at work inside your mind. One operates in the shadows. It's fast, automatic, always on. It reads the emotion on someone's face before you consciously register you're even looking at them. It finishes the phrase, bread and, before you've decided to. It flinches at a loud noise before your brain catches up to explain what just happened. This system doesn't need your permission. It doesn't ask for it, it just acts. The other one is the voice you call you, slow, deliberate. It's the one doing the math, the one drafting an email you've rewritten 4 times, the one that kicks in when you're trying to parallel park in a tight spot and you find yourself turning off the radio to concentrate. And here's the unsettling part, the part they never taught you, the fast, automatic one. It's in charge way more than you think. Most researchers who've studied this agree. The overwhelming majority of your impressions, your instincts, your snap judgments, and even many of your so-called decisions originate from the automatic, effortless system, not from the careful, deliberate one. The logical, reasoning version of you mostly just approves what the other one already decided. You're not irrational. You're not broken. You're human. Your brain was designed this way, and it was a brilliant design for most of human history. Fast decisions kept people alive. Slow, agonizing deliberation could get you eaten. But here's the problem. The world you're navigating now isn't the one your brain was built for. And the gap between those two worlds, that's where the real story lives. So now you know there are 2 systems running inside your mind. But here's what nobody asks. What happens when they disagree? Think about the last time you were really angry at someone. I mean genuinely, unreasonably furious. And in the middle of it, you thought of the most devastating thing you could possibly say, the exact words that would cut right through them. You didn't say it, you caught yourself, you pulled back, you swallowed it. That moment of control was not effortless. You felt it. It cost you something. And that's the secret hiding in plain sight. Thinking takes energy. Real, measurable physical energy. When researchers started actually measuring what happens in the body during intense mental effort, the results were striking. When people are asked to perform difficult mental tasks, really hold their focus, suppress an automatic reaction, calculate something complex, something physical shifts. Heart rate increases, muscles tighten. And here's the one that startled scientists most. The pupils dilate. Your pupils actually widen when you're doing hard mental work. And the moment the task is finished, or the moment you give up, they shrink back to normal, like a window into the exact amount of effort your mind is spending in real time, which means effort is real. It's biological, and your brain has a budget for it. There was a famous set of experiments where people were asked to do two demanding things at once: hold a 7-digit number in their head while also making a food choice. And here's the wild part. People holding a longer number in working memory were significantly more likely to choose the chocolate cake over the fruit salad, because self-control, logic, and resisting temptation all draw from the same limited mental reservoir as memorizing numbers. When your mental budget runs low, your automatic system takes over. And your automatic system likes easy. It likes familiar. It prefers the warm, sweet shortcut over the careful, reasonable choice. This is why brilliant people make terrible decisions when they're tired, why experienced professionals make errors at the end of a long shift that they'd never make at the start, why you've said things you immediately regretted after a long, draining day. It's not weakness, it's architecture. But here's what gets really interesting, and a little unsettling. Your brain doesn't just run out of energy, it runs out of willingness. There's a phenomenon researchers call cognitive ease. When things feel smooth and familiar, your automatic system hums along contentedly, and your logical mind stays on standby. But when something feels hard, strange, or resistant, that's when your slow, effortful mind gets drafted into service. The problem is, it doesn't always show up. Sometimes, when something is difficult, your brain doesn't think harder. It does something far more cunning. It answers a different question. Imagine someone asks you, "Is this company a good long-term investment?" That's a genuinely complex question. It requires analysis, probability thinking, understanding of markets. But your brain might quietly swap that question for, "Do I like this company's products?" and answer that one instead. And the terrifying thing, you won't notice the switch. You'll feel like you answered the real question. You'll feel like you reasoned it out. But you didn't. You felt your way through it, then handed your automatic system's answer to your rational self, who signed off on it without reading the fine print. Researchers call this substitution, and it's not rare. It's not something that only happens to careless or uneducated people. It happens to experts, to scientists, to people who've spent decades training themselves to think clearly. Because the pressure to feel like you've thought something through without actually doing the work is one of the most powerful forces in the human mind, and it gets stronger the more tired you are. Here's a question I want you to sit with for a moment. When was the last time you changed your mind about something you really believed? Not a small thing. Something you had defended. Something you felt certain about. Take a second, because there's something buried in that question that points to one of the strangest discoveries about how your brain actually processes the world. Your mind doesn't work like a camera. It doesn't just record what's out there and hand you a neutral, accurate image of reality. It builds a story. Every second of every day, your automatic system is constructing a coherent, flowing narrative about what's happening, filling in gaps, connecting dots, smoothing over contradictions. And it does this so fast, so seamlessly, that the finished story feels like raw reality, like truth, not interpretation. Researchers discovered this in a remarkable way. They showed people simple questions and found that even highly educated, experienced professionals tended to rely on mental shortcuts, rules of thumb, rather than actual logical reasoning when forming judgments. The shortcut wasn't wrong because people were lazy. It was wrong because the brain was designed to find a plausible answer fast, not a perfect answer slowly. And here's the detail that changes everything. The brain prefers coherent to accurate. When a story hangs together neatly, when the pieces click into place and it all makes sense, your automatic system marks it as true, not because it verified the facts, but because the feeling of coherence is, neurologically, almost indistinguishable from the feeling of truth. Think about that. The reason conspiracy theories spread isn't primarily because people are gullible. It's because a complete connected story, even a false one, feels more real than a fragmented, uncertain, complicated truth. Your brain rewards narrative. It is, in the most literal sense, addicted to things making sense. And this is where something truly wild happens with memory. Ask someone to recall an event they witnessed, not a traumatic one, just an ordinary disagreement or accident. Then ask them again a week later. The story will have changed. Subtle details, perspective, even who said what, all of it quietly reshuffled to fit better with how they felt afterward. Your memory isn't a recording, it's a reconstruction. And every time you reconstruct it, your automatic system tidies it up a little more to match your current worldview. Which means you are not remembering the past. You are rewriting it. And you have no idea it's happening. This isn't a bug. It's not something wrong with you. It's the same mechanism that makes you fluent in language, able to navigate complex social situations, capable of reading a room in seconds. The fast, automatic story-building engine in your brain is genuinely magnificent. But it makes one assumption that turns out to be very dangerous. It assumes the world is more predictable, more certain, and more under control than it actually is. Researchers who've spent decades studying overconfidence found something consistent. People routinely believe they understand far more than they do. That they can predict outcomes that are essentially random. That success happened because of their decisions, not partly because of luck. And the worst part is this: the confidence and the competence are not strongly connected. You can feel completely certain and be completely wrong. And the feeling of certainty doesn't come with a warning label. So here you are. You've been walking around your whole life feeling like a rational person, making decisions, forming opinions, drawing conclusions, trusting your instincts. And now comes the part that matters. Because understanding all of this isn't just fascinating, it changes something. Or at least, it can. Here's the truth. You are never going to think your way through life perfectly. Nobody does. The automatic system in your mind is too fast, too embedded, too essential to living. Without it, you couldn't function. You'd be paralyzed by the simplest choice. The goal was never to eliminate the fast mind. The goal is to know when to slow down. And here's what that actually looks like in practice. Researchers found that one of the most effective interventions wasn't to train people to think harder. It was simply to make them pause, to introduce friction, to slow the flow just enough that the deliberate mind gets a chance to check the automatic mind's work before it becomes a decision. Something as simple as asking, wait, do I actually have enough information to believe this? Or, is the answer I just came up with the answer to the question I was actually asked, or a different, easier one? That's the crack in the door. That's where a different kind of thinking starts to slip through. There's a phenomenon that one researcher described this way, and it has stayed with me ever since. He called it, what you see is all there is. The automatic mind builds its conclusions based on the information currently available, and it doesn't naturally account for the information it doesn't have. It doesn't say, I'm missing data. It says, this is the whole picture, and then it acts on it with full confidence. The antidote isn't cynicism, it's curiosity. When you catch yourself feeling very certain, that's actually a signal. Not that you're right, but that your automatic mind has finished building its story, and your slow mind hasn't been asked to check the work yet. The people who navigate the world most effectively aren't the ones with the fastest reflexes or the sharpest instincts. They're the ones who've built a strange habit, a slightly uncomfortable one. They distrust the comfort of certainty. They've learned to tolerate the feeling of not knowing long enough to actually think. And they've learned something even harder than that expertise doesn't protect you from your own blind spots. Some of the most consistent errors researchers have documented were found in people with advanced degrees, decades of experience, and genuine brilliance in their fields. Because the automatic mind doesn't care how smart you are. It just wants the question answered, quickly, cleanly, with a story that holds together. Now let's end with something real. Right now, as you're processing all of this, your automatic mind is already doing something fascinating. It's deciding how much of this to accept. It's filtering this through what you already believe. It's quietly asking, does this confirm what I already thought, or does it threaten it? And depending on the answer, it's about to influence whether you remember this video tomorrow, or quietly file it away as something you technically watched but didn't really take in. That's not a judgment, it's just how it works. But here's the thing, the fact that you're still here thinking about this means something. The fact that you paused on the discomfort. The fact that you let the question sit, even a little. That pause? That's the slow mind leaning in. And every time you let it lean in just a little longer, just a little more honestly, the gap between who you think you are and who you actually are gets a little smaller. Not because you've perfected your thinking, but because you stopped pretending it was already perfect. Somewhere right now, someone is scrolling past a headline, reading the first sentence, feeling certain in under 2 seconds they've already made up their mind and they have no idea. The cycle continues.